Vivian Banks, aka Aunt Viv, on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was an icon of Black excellence. And when I say Aunt Viv, I'm talking about dark-skinned Aunt Viv, played by the phenomenal Janet Hubert. She was everything. She was smart, poised, beautiful, accomplished, and confident. She had this presence on the show where, even though it was a sitcom and she was playing this really lighthearted character, there was still this gravitas to her. And she commanded a certain level of respect even during the funniest scenes. So there were plenty of jokes, but Aunt Viv was never the punchline. You knew not to play with her. And to this day, whenever I think about Aunt Viv, I can't help but think about that classic episode where she danced. You know, the one where she wore that pink unitard and danced circles around the young girls that were half her age. That was a moment, an iconic moment of Black culture. And even today, that dance routine that she did, it still slaps. But recently, I rewatched that episode and I noticed something different. Dancing Aunt Viv was just a Black woman in the middle of a perfectionist meltdown. And as hilarious and unserious as that episode was, I think we can still learn a few things from it. So today I'm going to talk about what I'm calling the Aunt Viv Effect. How Black women tend to use perfectionism to cope with the pressure to succeed and end up creating even more challenges for ourselves. Ready? Let's go. Good day, good people. Welcome back to episode 93 of the Life Edit Project podcast. As always, I'm your favorite life coach and podcast host, Coach Elizabeth, and I'm super excited to have you back with me again today. I am so excited for this episode. It's a little bit different. It's not, what I usually cover, but, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. But before I dive into today's main topic, I want to give you a quick reminder. My inbox is open, so you can ask me anything. You can submit a question and I will respond right here on a future episode of the show. It's absolutely free. And yes, you can remain anonymous so that you're not putting your personal business on blast, and nothing is off limits. So when I say ask me anything, I mean ask me anything. If you have a burning question that you've been struggling to answer for yourself, or if you are weighing an important decision, or if you want a little bit of outside perspective on a relationship that has been causing you a little bit of grief, I am here to support you. So you will find the link to submit a question in the show notes. So go ahead, don't be shy. Ask me anything. I cannot wait to hear from you. Also, a big shout out to all of my subscribers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Do me a favor, drop me a 5-star rating and review so that you can help even more listeners find the show. If you don't know how to do that, you will find all of the information that you need on my website at lifeeditproject.com/podcast. And you can always stream the latest episode of the show directly from that page. But of course, the show is streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and literally anywhere else that you like to listen to podcasts. So holla at your girl. Okay, that's it for the announcements. Let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. So I really wanted to close out Black History Month by talking about another icon of Black culture. You might recall that 2 weeks ago, I did an episode offering some of my thoughts on Kendrick Lamar's historic Super Bowl performance, but I wanted to go a little bit lighter and do something that wasn't exactly current events. And for whatever reason, Aunt Viv from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is the icon that popped into my head. So I wanted to talk about what happened on season 2, episode 7. So if you haven't seen it, you can definitely check it out wherever you like to stream things. It's currently on Hulu, so if you got Hulu, you can go ahead and check it out. So this is the episode where Aunt Viv is turning 40, and she ends up basically having a mini midlife crisis. This is a funny episode, right? It is hilarious. However, watching this episode from my current perspective as a 40-something Black woman, it felt so relatable and it felt a little too real at times. And there were times where, yeah, I laughed really hard, but then there were other moments where I was just really sad because of what I saw from Aunt Viv. And of course, the life coach in me couldn't help but notice all of the ways that she was just buckling under the pressure of perfectionism. And there were 4 ways in particular that I noticed perfectionism showing up for Aunt Viv on this episode. And I'm just going to give you a recap of the episode and point out all the things that I noticed. So the first thing that happened is pretty early on in the show, she is suddenly overly critical about her body. So one of the first scenes of the episode starts off with her getting ready to go to dinner with her husband to celebrate her birthday, and she's standing in front of the mirror and she is picking her body apart. She's like, poking at her belly, thinking that it's protruding too much. She is fidgeting with her skirt, just unsure of the way that it fits. She is holding out her arms like spread eagle style and jiggling her underarms, right? It's funny, but it's also super relatable. But what really jumped out at me when I watched this episode recently is how much of a departure this perspective is for her character. Normally, she's very confident and comfortable in her body. Like, she doesn't just walk into a room, she struts into a room, and she's very stylish and she just kind of owns whatever room she walks into. So to have this scene start off with her in the mirror not liking what it is that she sees, we can immediately tell that something is wrong. And I just saw this as a perfect example of how perfectionism can turn us into our own worst critics. And here's the nugget. Perfectionism is a lens that distorts what we perceive about ourselves, other people, and the situations that we find ourselves in. And this is problematic for so many perfectionists, especially as Black women, because then we are no longer reacting and responding to reality, but instead we're reacting and responding to the distortion that we perceive. And when we do that, we end up making things harder for ourselves. So in this episode, Aunt Viv is reacting to the distorted view that she has of her body. And as a result, like, she changes her outfit a couple of times, right? She ends up taking that much longer to get ready to go to dinner, right? But if she could have just looked in the mirror and seen herself for the way that she actually looked, she could have been out of the house and enjoying dinner in no time flat. So that's the first thing that happened. So then the episode continues and she and Uncle Phil, they go to dinner, but then there's another scene where Uncle Phil takes her to a birthday party. Like, he throws a birthday party for her. And there's this part in the party where the kids, they put together this slideshow where they're like recapping her life and they're celebrating all of her achievements. And, they make a few jokes at her expense and they kind of pick at her age because, they're kids and she's turning 40 and to them 40 is old, right? So as the kids are kind of going through her life from childhood all the way through the present day, she starts to second guess her career path and all of the choices that she's made to give up dancing and instead to earn a teaching degree and ultimately to become a college professor. What I noticed from this scene is that the kids, they're not intending to hurt her feelings. They're not criticizing her. They are really just trying to give her flowers for everything that she's accomplished. They're celebrating the fact that she's a mom and a wife. They're celebrating the fact that she has an accomplished career. And they mention the fact that she actually put something that she loved on the back burner in order to create this legacy of her family and her career. And Aunt Viv, she doesn't hear the praise that they're giving her. Instead, all she can hear is the criticism that she has abandoned her dreams and maybe even made the wrong choice. And so this is another nugget, another way perfectionism can show up in the lives of Black women in particular. Perfectionism is a filter that minimizes our successes and magnifies our insecurities. And it does this so efficiently that we never feel like we're enough. And this scene right here is ultimately what sets Aunt Viv off on this path to prove that she's got what it takes to be a professional dancer. But here's the thing. Nobody was actually questioning her decision. Nobody was questioning whether or not she should have been a dancer or whether or not she was capable of being a dancer. They were just saying, here's something you used to do, and now here's what you do instead. But Aunt Viv took that as I gave it up and now no one knows whether or not I had it in me. Then she embarks upon this whole journey to prove them wrong. And of course, the gag is that the only person she's trying to prove herself to is herself. So that's another way that perfectionism shows up for a lot of Black women. So then the next morning, Aunt Viv comes downstairs and she announces to her family that she is giving up teaching and instead she's going to pursue dance. And so then they show her going to this dance class. She goes downtown to this fancy dance studio, and homegirl has signed up for a dance class, but not any dance class. She has signed up for an advanced jazz dance class. And this is after decades of not having danced. Homegirl has not set foot in a dance studio. She has not taken lessons. And she is 40 years old, right? Because she just celebrated a birthday. However, she puts herself in the room with literally professional dancers who are in Broadway shows and have been actively dancing that are also half her age. And then, of course, things don't go according to plan, right? Like she doesn't even make it through the warm-up. And homegirl has the nerve to feel ashamed of herself when she does not move like these professional dancers that are half her age. And this is also something that happens with perfectionism. Perfectionism will have you chasing impossible standards and then shaming yourself for not being able to meet them. Aunt Viv in this episode, she was so ashamed of what she was unable to do in this dance class that she quietly left the class, right? She snuck out. And then she did not go back to class. She said she was still going to pursue dance, but she didn't go back to the dance class. She hired a private dance instructor. And this right here is the move of a projector perfectionist if ever I saw one. Because projector perfectionists, we don't let people see us be in the process of improving. Oh no. Pristine perfection is the only side of ourselves that we allow others to see. And that's exactly what Aunt Viv did in this episode. She left class feeling like a failure. And she decided, I just got to pop out and show them that I can be the best. And she does that by learning in private instead of alongside these other dancers that are supposed to be her peers. Then, of course, the episode goes on and she shows back up to a dance audition, right? And this is like the climax of the episode. So she has taken these private lessons with a top dancer to prepare for this audition. She goes in, and some of the same dancers that thought she was out of place when she showed up for the last class, they're like, oh, grandma, you don't belong here. You are not ready for this. And of course, Aunt Viv proves them wrong. She dances. She absolutely slays. She rubs it in the faces of her haters. And then she walks out the door and immediately collapses. And this scene is so fun to watch. Like, it is such a gratifying scene because Aunt Viv looks good in her pink unitard, right? The body is bodying. She looks like she was made for the dance stage, all of that. And she dances circles around all of those other dancers in the room with her. But here's the thing. Her success came at the expense of her well-being because it was not sustainable. In order for her to prepare for that audition, she talked about how she, gave up eating all of her favorite foods and she spent hours and hours and days and weeks practicing so much. And ultimately, she realized she couldn't keep that up. And that's the fourth nugget that I have for you. Perfectionism requires unsustainable levels of effort, and you will burn yourself out trying to keep up. Now, I want to say what's saddest about this whole episode is that Aunt Viv just really didn't even have to go that hard, right? Like, all of this was completely unnecessary. If she decided that she wanted to pursue dance, she could have just gotten back into dancing without having to give up teaching. Or instead of, starting with an advanced dance class. She could have started with an intermediate dance class, or dare I say it, even a beginner class, and she could have walked in and felt like a rock star instead of feeling like a failure. She also, could have signed up to take 3 dance classes a week just for funsies after the audition, right? Because yes, she landed one of the top roles, but then she declined because she realized, again, that she could not keep up with it. Of course, the episode ends with her saying to her family, oh, I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Now I know I could have done it, but I still like the choice that I made, right? But she could have still nurtured her own passion for dance by just taking dance classes for fun, right? Like it didn't have to be her profession. It totally could have been her passion, right? Dance as a hobby, that option, it was right there. But I guess that doesn't make for as compelling of a TV show, right? She could have signed up to teach dance to the next generation of dancers, right? Like she could have used dance as part of the way that she gave back or poured into the next generation of, young Black women. Honestly, the possibilities were limitless, but perfectionism limits possibilities. And that, I thought I only had 4 points for you, but I guess that's 5. Perfectionism limits possibilities, but that's a lie and it's a trap because there is always so much more that is available to you. And that, more than anything, my friend, is what I want to help you explore. What's possible in your life, in your career, in your relationships, and within your family. Anywhere that perfectionism has been holding you back from the possibilities, I want to help you knock down those barriers and explore. So, if you're interested, use the link that is in the show notes to book a call with me, and let's talk about how my one-on-one coaching services can help you. All right, that's all I have for you this week. I will be back in your ears next week with another fresh and juicy episode. In the meantime, go ahead and rewatch that episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and let me know what you notice about Aunt Viv and perfectionism in this episode. All right? Peace.